Hello, everybody. Evan Grant here. Another episode of This Week in Rangers Baseball, y'all, or as we should probably call it, this wacky week with the Rangers, because this was a bizarre week. And as I record this, it's only Thursday morning. Who knows what firings, hirings, dismissals this team could make before the end of the week. It's been a week like I've not seen in 26 years covering this team, and I'm not sure that it's happened in maybe ever here. But we'll obviously the news of the week we'll get to the firing of John Daniels, and the firing of Chris Woodward, who was fired by John Daniels, who was then fired, and what the promotion of Chris Young to chief of baseball operations. He'll still carry the GM title, but he's the chief baseball officer now. What that means. Let's get some of the business out of the way real quick. If you can, please subscribe to this channel, the DMN's Rangers Insider channel. Helps us continue to generate content. If you like what I'm saying, even though I'm talking in my very monotone and I guess kind of morose voice, if you like the video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up, leave comments or questions, and I know we'll have a lot of questions about this week, and I'll try to answer what I can. So, this week, wow. Let's just say that I thought I could see the Chris Woodward firing kind of coming down the pike as the last week was taking place. This team seemed to have regressed. Just wasn't playing good baseball, and it just felt like the vibe around the club had changed. Still, obviously, a surprise when a team fires a manager a year and a half into a rebuild season or rebuild process, but I can't say it was a complete surprise. On Wednesday, however, firing John Daniels, who had entered into a partnership with Chris Young atop the baseball operations flowchart in December of 2020, and had helped oversee the full teardown portion of the rebuild, and had started with Chris Young on the uptick, with the signings of Marcus Semien and Corey Seager, both of whom were recruited by manager Chris Woodward and general manager Chris Young and John Daniels. Now, two of those three guys are gone, and Seager and Semien only have 9+ and 6+ years remaining with the Rangers. You have to wonder how that impacts their vision of what they signed up for. I talked with Semien a little bit yesterday. He said, again, all the right things. There's a vision here to win, and that's what he signed up for. That said, when you fire a manager and a GM in 72 hours, maybe you do have a vision, but I wonder about the plan. I wonder about the ability to see the plan through, because it's inevitable that with those two firings, there will be some changes. We've seen some changes kind of in the way Tony Beasley, the interim manager, handles the club pregame. Small, tiny things that amount to kind of eyewash for everybody, but it's trying to set a tone of everybody's the same. Everybody's got to buy in. It's the full group. These are little tiny things that instead of coming out ragtag in red and blue and gray t-shirts for batting practice, everybody's matching t-shirts. Small things where meetings that were optional are now going to be shortened, but are mandatory for players. So those kinds of things. But in terms of the long range plan, John and Chris were Chris Woodward, that is, were significant in architects on that. And when you have some change, there is going to be some deviation. Baseball rebuilds don't operate in a linear fashion as is. You can't say, okay, we're going to be good by 2023 and guarantee it. The Rangers still do intend, as Ray Davis, the owner, said yesterday during about a 12-minute media conference, he still intends to compete in 2023. He understands that there's going to be more expenditure needed this offseason. He rattled through some of the needs: two starting pitchers, front line starting pitchers, which going rate for two starting pitchers would be about, I don't know, $50 million per year. A middle of the order bat, another $27 million a year. And we still haven't addressed the bullpen, and there are needs in the bullpen. So the Rangers willing to invest another $500 million this offseason. That's what it may take if this team really intends to get over the hump this for 2023. If not, you may take some, I don't want to say a step back, but the rebuild process does slow down. And for the Rangers, who are about to finish up a 6th consecutive losing season, time runs short. I can't. Ray Davis said that he had made the decision to fire John Daniels before Daniels and Woodward ever came into his office on Monday and recommended the firing of the manager. But I can't help but wonder how the reception that John Daniels got, which was being booed on Saturday before the Hall of Fame introduction, the firing of the manager, and then the smallest crowd in Rangers history at the new ballpark, 13,191 on Monday night, if that didn't also have an effect in the owner's thinking, making it basically a little bit more reactionary. And reactionary is never good. You may end up with the right outcome, but the process is not ideal. So the impact on Chris Young. Let me just say a couple things about John Daniels here. He's been a polarizing figure for a long time. There's been this narrative somehow about this power struggle with he and Nolan Ryan, and that John pushed Nolan out. Listen, they didn't agree on certain things, but for a long portion they worked together. And the work that John did was running baseball operations. He made the player decisions. Nolan was involved, but was more, I would say, advisory, consultory type level with most of those players. There were very few guys about which Nolan had very strong feelings. It was left to John Daniels and his group that at that point in time included Thad Levine, now with the Minnesota Twins as GM, and AJ Preller, now with the San Diego Padres as GM. And when they did butt heads, and John said, look, I need to run baseball operations if I'm going to run baseball operations. There was a lot of public outcry because Nolan Ryan left the organization. I don't know how to, this whole argument just makes me tired in the head because I can't say it often enough that both those guys deserve credit, and neither guy really deserves blame. They were brought into what amounts to a forced marriage. They made it work and took teams to 2 World Series together, and those things have an expiration date. I believe that John Daniels, after his 17 years as the head of baseball operations with the Rangers, goes down as the best GM in Rangers history. 4 division titles, 2 AL pennants, what should have been a World Series championship. But it can also be said that a guy like that can eventually be fired if you're around long enough. And when you pair that up with your more recent track record of 6 losing years, it's understandable that a guy would be in jeopardy or have his role scaled back or let go. I think John acknowledged that on Monday, that he understood his role going forward was very much up in the air. I think his desire was to probably scale back some, or at least try to scale back and let Chris do more and more of the baseball operations, but they were at the very least equal partners. This was a much different dynamic than John and Nolan. This was an equal partnership in terms of day-to-day moves. Everything was discussed really intricately between the two of them and agreed upon. How does this affect the rebuild and how does it affect Chris Young? Look, Chris Young had not run a department for a major league club when he was hired as GM, and since he didn't technically operate baseball operations, he still hasn't run a department. So now he's running all of baseball operations, which encompasses a number of departments. I think he's more than up to that task. The guy is one of the brightest executives in baseball. It's one of the reasons the Rangers brought him in. It's one of the reasons it was a real coup to get him from Major League Baseball, where who knows, he might have been on track to be the next commissioner. Certainly would. I'm not going to get into old Rob Manfred, but he certainly had a bright future at Major League Baseball. But the thing that I liked about the Young Daniels dynamic is that not only did they have a good working relationship, you were pairing a guy who, in some regards, was fresh blood in the organization, Chris Young, with a guy who had been through the ups and the downs of being a GM and handling a team that had been a loser and building them into a winner, seeing when the winning windows kind of ebb and trying to get back to winning again. So I value experience. I think that those guys are valuable, and I think that the first thing that Chris Young is going to have to go do before he even goes out and decides what he's going to do on a manager. So I have a feeling he's got an idea about what he'd like to do for manager. Is he's got to go out and I don't know if I'd say reshape baseball operations, but he's certainly going to have to fill a hole left by John Daniels' departure, and whether that's elevating other people into more authority, bringing more people in, or even changing anybody, I don't know. But that seems to be something of a burden that he's going to have to handle now, rather than simply addressing the idea of what do we do about these coaches at the minor league level, at the major league level, getting our scouting reports together for free agents, so forth and so on. That's typically what would be taking place over the last 6 weeks of the season. He's got some shoring up of a lot of things to do. So that will be interesting to see. As far as manager goes, I think that Chris has somebody in mind. We put Bruce Bochy at the top of our list for potential Ranger candidates if he's interested. He's in his mid-60s. He's had multiple knee replacements and a hip replacement. Was really having a hard time moving around in San Francisco at the end of 2019. But Chris Young played for him, and that's always where you look. You always start to, is there a previous relationship? And there is. Both of them had lived in San Diego, or at least spent a lot of off-season time in San Diego over the past, and had run into each other. At the same point in time, Tony Beasley, the interim manager, was also Chris Young's first manager, full-time manager in the minor leagues. So there's a relationship there too. The difference, obviously, is Bochy's got 3 World Series titles and took San Diego, another team, to the World Series. So I feel like, based on the messaging that's coming down from the Rangers, ownership is tired of losing, expects to win, isn't willing to go through mistakes that are inevitable for first-year managers, and would like to get somebody experienced who will maximize every situation for the Rangers. Listen, I think guys like Tony Beasley, other young managers could certainly maximize the energy the effort, and that's worth a lot. But I think if the Rangers are talking about getting over a hump and maybe getting a couple extra wins, squeezing out a couple extra wins, at least the perception is, oh, well, that's where a manager can make a big difference. So we'll see. We'll see what Bochy's desires are if he wants to manage again. I think the attractiveness of working with Chris Young certainly will make some sense, and I think that that's a possibility. In the meantime, the Rangers will try and straighten out what's going on the field. That's all they can do over the last 48 games. I don't think win-loss records really matter, though you would like to see this team end up with somewhere above, say, 72 wins. There were projections for 75 before the season started. The Rangers entered Wednesday, I believe, on pace for 72, which would represent a 12-win improvement over last year. And this goes to the one question that I still can't really get an answer or wrap my hands around. Ray Davis did say on Wednesday that he felt like the rebuild was on track. So if it is on track, then why are you changing the manager and the chief baseball officer? That part I'm having a hard time reconciling. I think it was a case of him more or less misspeaking, that he felt like there had been progress, just simply not enough progress or enough substantial progress, and that's why he opted to make a change. This is Chris Young's organization now, and we'll find out how he puts his full stamp on the organization. There's no partnerships now. It's in the hands of one guy. It's going to be one guy's vision. Sorry, I just yawned on TV. It's been a long couple of days, folks. As I said, this has been one of the strangest weeks, probably the strangest week I've ever covered in Rangers history. The days in which Don Zimmer was fired and then asked to manage a couple more games until his interim was chosen in 1982 preceded me. So did the firing of Eddie Robinson, and apparently the stationing of some armed guards around the stadium to keep some prying media out of Arlington Stadium in that process took place that same year. I think it was 77 or 78, 77 when the Rangers went through 4 managers in 1 week. And of course, there was the great 2004 passion play, or whatever you want to call it, in which Tom Hicks 1 month said that Grady Fuson was going to be his next GM, and that process was going to happen sooner rather than later. And the next month, he had basically been cut out of the mix. John Hart had been extended, and so had Buck Showalter. So this is an organization. I was on the ticket yesterday with Corby Davidson and Bob Sturm, and I thought Corby asked a great question about, this team seems to be what seems to be most memorable about the Rangers is not their accomplishments, but their follies, their bizarre activities. And with teams that haven't won a championship, that's always the case, because we on our side are always looking for examples to underscore, well, here's why a team hasn't won a championship. Maybe over dramatize that a little bit. Yeah, I acknowledge that. But at the same point in time, there have been, numerous front office weirdness, managerial weirdness. And the thing I always tell people, owners included, because I've said this to past ownership groups here, is that, when you express the idea of patience, that you're going to be patient with a rebuild, it's going to take longer than you ever imagined. Somebody comes to you and says, well, we'll be better in 2 years. Don't count on it. Don't count that the rebuild will be completed out in that 2-year period. Invariably, it takes longer. And then all of a sudden, just when you think this is not going to happen, something like 2009 blossoms right out of it. And then all of a sudden you're on the cusp of World Series and a great run. So um, this is this is going to be a test of the patience of Ray Davis. The Rangers can't afford to deviate from their plan, even if it means that their rebuild is taking a little bit longer than necessary. But the worst thing you could do at this point in time would be a great giant veer. Hello, with the hand signals again. Just a great giant veer off the path in one way or another. I don't think that there will be that. I think there will be some continuity here, but that's something the Rangers definitely have to guard against. So, quite frankly, the final 6 weeks of the season are probably going to be more interesting for things that happen off the field than on them. Though I expect that before the end of August, we will see Josh Young in a Rangers uniform. As long as the Rangers wait until the middle of the coming week, Josh would still be able to, in all likelihood, retain his rookie status for 2023, which is significant for two reasons. The Rangers would love to have a guy in the battle for Rookie of the Year, but also winning Rookie of the Year by a guy who is on the roster from opening day, which Josh would be next year potentially, would result in a bonus draft hit for a team. Very valuable. Would also result in some significant bonuses for the player. Also very attractive. So I think that the Rangers will be mindful of that. If I'm making a prediction here, bold prediction, here's your Rangers schedule. What I look for is, when's a day in the next, after this period elapses, where the Rangers will be home? Like maybe Friday, August 29th against Detroit, start of a homestand. Yeah, I believe it is the first football Friday, unless this week is. My kids are at a high school. I've lost track of high school football this year. I'm sorry. But that Friday night against Detroit uh, would seem to be a good opportunity. I don't think Josh Young is going to bring 20,000 fans extra out to the Rangers ballpark, but he would inject his first game would inject a little bit of energy, would give a little bit of jolt. And I think it makes sense at this point in time to try and do that at home, because you need to build the experience. Build international hand sign for build. You need to build the game experience. You need to build some kind of atmosphere at the ballpark. And I would be mindful of that. 8 less at bats on, or 4 less at bats on next Wednesday at Colorado, which would be the first day they could technically call him up to retain rookie status for 2023. Don't think that's worth what it would, the value of bringing him up for a home game. So I've rambled enough about that. I got to say, August 2022 has been a month. Many of you reached out on social media, email, and sent your condolences on the passing of my mother at the beginning of this month, and I appreciate that very, very much. Difficult to lose a parent, as I'm sure many of you are aware, but also my mom didn't suffer, and I was with her at the end. So I got to be there for both of my parents' last breath, and I consider that something of a gift. So enough about that. But here we are, month of changes for the Rangers. It's just been one thing after another. I guess strap in and let's see what the rest of the year holds. I'll be back with you next week. Maybe we'll be in a happier place. Jazz hand time. All right, everybody. Thank you. So long.